to take you through a couple of important things that have just been happening. Look, in broad terms, everybody's welcoming this. Nearly everybody is putting their weight behind this. It's called Safeguarding the Union. It's the blueprint for what this government wants to do to fix some of the problems that the DUP said there were with last year's Windsor framework, and actually listening to Hilary Benn, the shadow Northern Ireland Secretary, listening to the Select Committee Chair, Robert Buckland, who chairs the Northern Ireland Select. You know, this has got the backing of the House, but there are some niggles, and they're from two categories of people: Brexiteers. You saw nervousness there from Bill Cash, the veteran Brexiteer, and from Theresa Villiers, who was talking about Northern Ireland still staying close to the EU single market, which is true, even after this revision to the deal. And then the other notable contribution so far from Sammy Wilson, the hardline Brexiteer, hardline unionist, DUP member, there appearing to accuse people of weakness in negotiation, not getting an even better deal because some of the rules do still stay. That means that Northern Ireland can have a seamless border with the Republic of Ireland, and there are consequences to that still upset some unionists. But it's broadly speaking, I think the government will be happy with what they've just seen in terms of getting people behind it.
What about the document itself? You've got it in full. We're sort of ploughing through it all. What do you think the key elements of it are that you can tell us about? OK, so it's 80 pages and it was released at 12:30. Let's have a little look. It's called speed reading.
It's Safeguarding the Union. There are lots of absolutely fascinating little things. It starts with just a little bit of history. And let me just put it up. And it makes clear this is the third time that the government has had to revise what it's doing with Northern Ireland after Brexit. There were significant issues with Boris Johnson's deal, and then Rishi Sunak came along and negotiated the Windsor framework, and there were legitimate concerns, slightly politer language, about that. So they've set about trying to fix it. Right, so what's the goal of this document? Look at this. Here it is in a sentence. The measures outlined today will copper fasten, new term on me, Northern Ireland's integral place in the United Kingdom, fulfilling the Acts of Union 1800, strengthen the UK's internal market and safeguard new protections into the future. There's a list of measures. It's enormously long. It goes from A to X, 23 different measures there. And it's summarised here right at the start. Let's have a little look at the biggest ones. And they're going to start legislating, passing some of these laws tomorrow. So strengthening the union, making sure that Northern Ireland's place in the UK fully respects its role in the internal market. This one, Jane, is the most important. Guarantee the smooth flow of goods from Great Britain to Northern Ireland and sort out trade. It's going to strengthen that Stormont break, which Rishi Sunak put at the heart of the Windsor framework last year, which is the ability of politicians in Northern Ireland to say, stop, I don't like this legislation that's coming from the EU that could affect people. One of the most controversial things in this document is this. Now, because Northern Ireland needs to stay kind of obeying the same rules as the European Union so that they can keep that, they can maintain a flow of goods without any kind of border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, it had been following new EU laws. But look at this. Under this revision, there's going to be a legislative change to recognise the end of the automatic pipeline of EU law. So they spell out how they're going to do that. In other words, when there is new EU law, this document claims that it won't automatically be implemented in Northern Ireland. That's fascinating, and we need to understand more, because at some point, if the European Union bring in a whole raft of laws, but Northern Ireland haven't implemented them, could it be the case that Northern Ireland is in a more advantageous competitive position? But let me try and explain to you what this looks like in diagram form, because there's some fantastic charts in this. Look at this. This is how difficult it is to export from Europe, Ireland, to Great Britain. Look at all the different steps that you now have to take in order to get your goods from Dublin to Holyhead. But this is the thing that they're proud of. This is new. They're looking both at goods going from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, but also goods going from Northern Ireland to Great Britain. And here, stuff going that way, nothing. No processes or formalities, and also stuff going that way, nothing. So that is, I think, the triumph, some would see, of the agreement that's been struck. And here, ultimately, finally, is where this agreement leaves Northern Ireland. It leaves Northern Ireland in what I think many would privately say, not Brexiteers, but privately many in the government would say, an advantageous position for Northern Ireland, better position than many even in the rest of Great Britain, because you've got access to the single market for Northern Ireland, just like places like Ireland and Norway. But you've also, if you're in Northern Ireland, got unfettered access to the UK's internal market. Look, big tick there. And that's something that Ireland and Norway don't have. But without Northern Ireland having to pay into the EU budget, have freedom of movement, follow EU rules, follow EU procurement rules, and on and on and on. It's quite interesting, of course. This makes it look like quite a good deal for Northern Ireland. But what country do they not compare it with? Well, anyone in Great Britain. So we, you might not have it here, but they don't choose to highlight that in this document. Funny that. Anyway, it's a big deal. It's a very complicated document. And then the laws that underpin it, Jane, are going to be even more complicated again. So there's a lot to look at. Let's keep monitoring the reaction.
So there's a lot to look at in the nuts and bolts of the legislation, etc. But I suppose for most people in Northern Ireland, unless they're involved in importing or exporting, what they're going to take from what's happened today is that hopefully goods, services, pay rises for a lot of people may potentially be happening. There's a big financial package that comes with this.
Yeah. This is going to transform people's lives in Northern Ireland. In order to get this deal up and running, Rishi Sunak has signed away a £3.3 billion cheque and promised to be more generous to Northern Ireland in all future public spending settlements. So that's a huge deal. Also, from next week, Northern Ireland will have democratic representation. It's been run by civil servants for almost 2 years. That will end next week. Politically, there will be a First Minister from Sinn Féin. That has never happened before. It's a joint government. The DUP still have to nominate their deputy prime minister, their deputy first minister, but nevertheless, the symbolism of having a nationalist, separatist first minister is inescapable. And Rishi Sunak will have another piece of his legacy jigsaw just put in place. That's why today matters. It's a big change, tweaking the constitution, changing the politics, setting the way that Britain and the United Kingdom works on an ever so slightly different direction. It is important.
Sam, there will be, as you said, we heard in the Commons, there'll be some members of the DUP, when you sit down, who will still not be happy with this. There'll be still people who've got concerns. What's happening now across there at Westminster? Is there frantic scurrying behind the scenes? Are they trying to basically get around all the people who've got niggles and who are unhappy about various elements and calm them down so that when this does come into the Commons tomorrow, it just goes straight through?
The job of trying to get everybody on side, I think, took a massive leap forward on Monday night when Geoffrey Donaldson, the leader of the DUP, faced down the leaders of the other leaders, the DUP executive, in a meeting that went on until, I think, 1:30 in the morning. And he felt at the end of that they had sufficient numbers to win that debate internally. Now, you're going to get noises off. We saw one of the prominent DUP MPs, Sammy Wilson, sounding off in the Commons chamber right now. But if the DUP were happy, they were the biggest blocks to restoring Stormont. There might be noises off from Brexiteers, but ultimately Labour are backing this, so you're going to have the votes in the Commons to make this happen. It looks, largely through absence of any other comment, as if the EU are happy, even though they seem to be saying, you could do less checks than we required even a year ago. So that seems to be a tick. From everything I can see right now, Jane, actually, quietly, the government have managed all the steps that you need to get this back up and running. So by the time it actually formally requires the authorisation in the Commons, that shouldn't be so much of a problem.